I'm at my parents' house, and for the past 30 years or so, they've been canning tomatoes every year. So here are tomato plants. It's just chock full of tomatoes. And we're going to do most of these today. There's some more over there. So, and the cool thing about this is I'll show you the motor setup we have for the food mill. I'm down here in the parents' basement, and we start with a good rinse. And all those cherry tomatoes are from my garden at home. And I got like 3 whole tomatoes in there that are like full size, like this one's from my garden. And the rest are my cherry tomatoes. Oh, and then I grew some bell peppers too. These are supposed to be full size, but clearly my garden was not producing. So rinse these, make the surface of it squeaky clean, and then put them in here. And then these ones I cut any bad spots in the stem out. Those go in here. These go in the compost. And then in here we're putting, this will end up being tomatoes, onions, peppers. It'll be about 1/5 pepper, about half an onion per like this size tray, and a whole bunch of herbs. And then those will go in the oven or on the stove down here in the basement to cook. I had neglected to bring any sort of tripod or even my big camera, so this is on my cell phone, just propped on a pot handle. To do these, I go in like this with a paring knife. In this case, these are Roma tomatoes. Okay, this one still has a lot of green in it, so maybe I'll just take the little top off. And then cut out any bad spots. Then I will cut it in half, put it over the pot, and squeeze. So that's it. We're working on cooking these down, and just so you know, there is an herb concoction there. What is that, Mom?
Parsley, oregano, and lots of basil.
Yeah, so a decent amount. We don't really measure anything. If you're good at cooking, then you probably be able to guess the proper amounts.
And here goes some garlic.
And some garlic. Would you say?
I got probably a half tablespoon per container.
Okay.
Of chopped garlic.
There's more there. These you have to be really careful. If you're doing them on a stovetop, start them low, because if they burn, that ruins like the whole pot. And then the ones in the oven, you have to make sure that any of these greens, the seasoning, will be submerged and mixed in and not wet. Otherwise it'll brown and that'll make it go bad too. In this case, this is a mix of all those other things, non-tomatoes. And I just put them in the bottom of the pan and then cover it with tomatoes. But after doing this a little bit, I'll be done cutting up tomatoes. And that will be 7 5-gallon buckets worth of whole tomatoes. So that's 35 gallons of whole tomatoes. And I'll have this 1 bucket left over of scraps after that. And another thing that we do is we don't have any huge pots to mix it or to cook them in. So we mix between all the pots to try to get like a, there's a more in there, to get a homogeneous mix of all the tomatoes. And this is harvest number 2 of the season. So there we are, 7 buckets worth of stuff. Well, hi Quill. 7 buckets worth of stuff plus a bucket of peppers. And the tomatoes and peppers that we used in this, they're mixed, but I think the peppers are not of a hot variety. They're just like sweet peppers, bell peppers, banana peppers, whatever. And the tomatoes is, like I said, a mixed variety. I had cherry tomatoes, there's Roma plum tomatoes, there's Better Boys, beefsteaks, a nice assortment. So now we have to let these cook down for at least an hour, maybe more. This is one of the first ones we did. and it's getting kind of soft, so that's good. Soft stuff will go through the food mill better. This one's still, it's just barely getting soft, and then this one's still hard. So, and I have to stir the ones that are in the oven too. This is the motor that we use on our food mill. It's a Dayton gear motor, I don't know, 19.2 to 1, so kind of slow working. And I modified the tip of it to have a, I just used a hacksaw to cut in there and then epoxied in a drive cog which fits in there. And then I also built this little stand here. This was like 10 years ago or something, so it's not my best work. I would have done something a little bit better, but it has worked for 10 years. So I guess it's pretty good, or at least good enough. And I had to do this saddle here that goes on separate, and you have to screw it on every time because, well, the shaft goes in there and then this goes on there, so there's no way to really get it in unless I put the motor on afterwards, but it's mounted more permanently. And this is a Villaware Food Strainer 200. If you can see that, there we are. I didn't have it recording. So that stuff meal that had come out once, and we put it back through, so this is actually the third time that this has been through, and we're still getting good meat and liquid out of it. And now for a fourth time. So I think we just keep going until it stops making meat and juice. This part is normally, I mean, this can be done as a one-person job, ideally 2 people, but in this case with 3 people I can record with one hand and help out with the other. So the motor here, you can see that the runout is acceptable, and I just made that adapter with a hacksaw and a vise in the garage. It's not like my dad has a lathe or anything, because he doesn't. And then we just pour it in. And occasionally we have to scrape the screen because it does get filled with meat. And we just use the back of a knife. That's 2-hand. As we empty pans here, they get washed out and then filled with the good stuff here, and then put back onto the stovetop to cook for another few hours. How many hours? You get a shoulder shrug?
Depends on how thin or thick you want it.
And that's how long you do it.
Were the tomatoes full of water?
Yeah.
You just don't know.
So added emphasis here to not burning it, because if you burn it, then you might as well just throw it away. My mom says low and slow. So these are on just, medium low. The whole area will kind of get splashed, even if you're super careful. It inevitably happens. So you want to put on, clothes that you don't care about, and then protect anything in the area. Like over there, some clothes. Protect anything in the area that you don't want to get covered in tomato sauce. Also wear protective footwear, especially in my case. Do not wear flip-flops because you don't want to get like boiling water tomato sauce on your feet. A good way to mix these up is from your tailings, or not tailings, I don't know, whatever produce you have. You take it, put some in that and some of that and some in all the other pans.
Yep.
And that's how you mix it up. Instead of having to spoon from one pan to the next, to the next, to the next, you just take whatever you make and then you divvy it up between your cook pots. After every 2 of the smaller pots, or 1 of the larger pots, we will do the double, triple, pentuple milling of the tailings. I don't know what to call, like, which part which, because I think of gold tailings are, I guess, that part over there that's going in those pans, and then is this the gold? I don't know. Now we get to the canning portion of it. My mom here is filling the jars while I tape this. In each one of these, there is a teaspoon, like just a level teaspoon of canning salt, and these jars are quarts, and it doesn't matter if you use wide mouths or narrow mouths. The jars are preheated. In this case, they came straight out of the dishwasher, but if they're already cleaned and cooled off, then you want to heat them up in the oven or in some hot water. Not too hot, just so that they don't get thermal shock from putting, boiling hot liquid into it. Because this has been cooking now for 3 hours, 4 hours, and it's boiling hot. You can see the steam coming off of it. Or water vapor. I know, steam is transparent.
This is so cool.
Oh, apparently we got a new toy here. So we wiped every jar lid with a damp paper towel, and then we're pulling these out of boiling water, or simmering water. It just has to be, hot, and placing them on the jars. So you're supporting with the towel to carry it over to the...
It's too much work to lose now.
Right.
And the jars are hot.
Now, yes, they're boiling. To put these lids on, you line it up. It will be hot, and then you use your finger, maybe with a towel or a hot pad, to press down as you tighten the threads. And it doesn't have to be super tight, just enough to hold it in place.
Down into the hot tub.
10 minutes. Fail. That's just done alarm.
That's what? Yeah, this one's done. But I'll just leave it until you're ready. So these handles are pretty hot in the boiling water. So I just use my wooden spoons or plastic spoons. And I heard some popping. That's a good thing.
They're already popping. There were like
Music.
3 or 4.
And then
5,
lift them out.
6.
Tilt it. And then put them in the back there. Now when you get really good and know where you're at, you bring one back over with you. But don't lose track.
Why tilt them sideways?
To get the water off the top.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Support underneath.
Yep, sorry. few other tips that were brought up when doing these. The pan that we do the lids and rings in, you can bring it over to the table. And then also when you put the lids and rings in, put the rings in first into the pan and then the lids on top. And that way you're not trying to dig below the rings to put the lids on. Also, when you pull them out, don't move them for at least like 12 hours, but ideally 24 hours, just to let them cool down completely. And also you want to leave a gap between all of them so that you get proper airflow. If you're on your last batch and you're doing little ones and you don't quite have enough, fill a jar with water and put it in there. That takes up the space and it keeps them upright. In our case, we can reuse the rings. These are fine, but we always use new lids. No exception. And always new lids. Even one of these I tilted over too far and the sauce created steam or whatever in the lid and it kind of shot out the side because of overpressure or something. We replaced that lid with a fresh one and recanned it, and it's fine now. Alright, I started helping around 1, but my dad and mother were getting things ready, cleaning all of the supplies here, cleaning the work area. So they probably started at 11, and I helped them at 1. Normally they would try to get an early start, but it was pouring rain this morning, so they couldn't go pick tomatoes. Anyways, it's now 9:30 at night, and everything's done, and I can just feel the heat radiating off of these as they're cooling down. And one last thing that you're going to want to do is mop the floors, because you better believe that there is tomato sauce everywhere on these floors. So if you're canning tomatoes, don't do it on white carpet. Not that we ever have. We've always done the canning of tomatoes down here in the basement. This is the basement oven, and this is all that it does. Well, sometimes it makes jerky if you leave the door open a little bit. So that's what we have. When we were washing the tomatoes, that was just in this utility sink, right next to the laundry. So, is my hair good? Am I sweaty? I am sweaty. It's hot down here. I hope you enjoyed that. 3 clicks, like, comment, and subscribe.